Hi, I'm Leora. I was 17 when my sister called me that wheelchair girl and said I couldn't come to her wedding, not because of my behavior, not because of logistics, but because she didn't want me in the photos. They didn't say it to my face. Most of them never do. Instead, they smiled, toasted, and moved me to a table by the bathroom. But the truth? The worst part wasn't being excluded. It was realizing they never planned to include me in the first place. Why does it take being erased for people to finally see you? The air in downtown Seattle always carried this mix of damp concrete and fresh lilacs in spring. Comforting to most, but to me, it signaled another family event where I'd have to pretend everything felt normal. As I wheeled myself over the uneven cobblestones toward the rehearsal dinner venue, I tightened my grip on the push rims, partly from the slope, partly from nerves. Callista had picked one of those sleek event spaces with big glass windows and overpriced minimalist decor. I paused just outside the door, watching a few guests mill around inside, laughing too loud in their crisp semi-formals. My mother, Sable, had arrived earlier to help set up, whatever that meant. I wasn't invited to be part of that. A woman with a clipboard spotted me and held the door open with a polite smile, her eyes briefly flicking to my chair, then darting away. I nodded and entered quietly. The main hall was warm, the kind of golden glow that flatters everyone. The long table stretched across the room, adorned with greenery and delicate place cards tucked into gold stands. A planner in black buzzed around, adjusting napkins and touching up the candles, like she was setting a stage. I scanned the table for my name, rolling slowly past the clusters of place cards. I found Callista's in the center, predictably. Then Bryn's next to her, of course. My father's, Astria, at the end near the planner, as always. But mine wasn't there. Instead, near the far corner of the table, by the exit to the patio, I saw a single folded card. It wasn't printed like the others. It was handwritten in rushed cursive. Needs assistance. For a moment, I stared at it, unsure if it was a mistake or a joke. My heart thudded in my chest, too heavy for a mistake, too cruel for a joke. I looked around. No one else seemed to notice. Or maybe they did, and decided not to. I didn't move the card. I didn't flip it over. I just backed up quietly, turned my chair toward the corner of the room, and parked myself against the wall. I waited until Sable emerged from the kitchen, cheeks flushed with purpose and some mild Chardonnay. I called her name softly. She turned and gave me that stretched smile that always preceded a dismissal. "Can I talk to you for a second?" I asked. She sighed like I'd interrupted a moment of great importance. We stepped into the hallway outside the dining room. "They didn't put my name on the place card," I said. "It says needs assistance." Sable blinked, then brushed a strand of hair behind her ear. "Oh, honey, I'm sure it wasn't intentional. Don't make this into something it's not. But it's Callista's day. Just go with the flow, okay?" And just like that, the conversation was over. She walked back in, leaving me standing there, or rather, sitting there, with my thoughts rearranging themselves into something colder. I didn't follow her. I stayed in that hallway a bit longer, long enough to hear Callista's laugh from the main room, followed by the planner's voice confirming the schedule. This wasn't the first time I'd been mislabeled. It started young, school field trips where I was the one needing extra hands, church potlucks where I was introduced as brave, and family dinners where I was quiet but sweet. Never just Leora, never just me. I'd been trained subtly and thoroughly to be grateful for being included at all. That gratefulness was expected to show up as silence. To blend in meant to not ask questions. Not about seating, not about credit, not even about my own name. Inside, people began taking their seats. A few glanced my way, mostly to see if I needed help navigating the narrow space. I waved them off before they could ask. Callista spotted me and walked over. Her dress shimmered with intent, her lipstick flawless. "Glad you made it," she whispered. leaning in for a quick hug that felt more like a PR photo op than a sisterly moment. Then she turned away before I could respond, calling to someone about the cake delivery. I rolled toward my designated corner, feeling the eyes that didn't want to meet mine. That was the first time I realized this wedding had no space for me. I lingered by the drink station longer than necessary, pretending to study the list of mocktails like I didn't already know every option. Truth was, I wasn't ready to head back into that glowing, overly curated room, especially not after the name card incident. But standing still only made me more visible, and that kind of attention always came with a certain sting. So I took a deep breath, pressed my palms against the rims, and made my way in. The room hadn't shifted. People still hovered near the wine, chuckled in little clusters, dropped compliments about how gorgeous everything looked. No one mentioned the obvious, that I wasn't really seated at the table. I was positioned near the back, behind a structural column that blocked half my view and right beside the bathroom door, where servers shuffled in and out, carrying trays of appetizers and crumpled napkins. I stared at the folded card again. Still needs assistance. It hadn't transformed into Leora while I was away. My parents' seats were in a better spot, my sister's surrounded by her bridal party. And me, I might as well have had a sign taped to my forehead. Afterthought. No one said anything, not a glance, not a raised brow. They saw, I'm sure, but they didn't look. The scraping sound of a chair leg nearby startled me. A cousin, I think his name was Jared, glanced over, then leaned toward another guest and asked under his breath, "Is she with the catering crew?" I didn't flinch. I didn't say a word. But something in me chipped a little. Maybe it was the way he said she, like I wasn't within earshot, or like I wasn't part of the same bloodline. I stared at my water glass and took slow sips. I'd learned to control my breathing in moments like these, to pace myself emotionally. It wasn't the first comment, and I knew it wouldn't be the last. Then came the clinking of a spoon against a wine glass. The room quieted as Callista stood at the center, backlit by a string of fairy lights that wrapped around the arch behind her. She raised her champagne flute and gave a perfect pageant smile. "I just wanted to thank everyone for being here tonight. It means so much to have the people I love most in the world celebrating with me." People murmured approval. A few cheers and claps. I couldn't have pulled this off without my bridesmaids. Bryn, you've been my rock. To Mom and Dad, for supporting me through the chaos. And to Grant, for saying yes when I started planning before he even proposed. Laughter followed. Warm, familiar. I waited. I shouldn't have, but I did. She didn't say my name. No, and my sister Leora. No, and of course, my family wouldn't be complete without just the sound of glasses clinking and my silence swelling up behind my ribs like smoke. I forced a smile. The kind I'd perfected for school events, church brunches, and birthdays, where I sat beside a gift table instead of around it. I was used to being skipped in speeches. I was used to being someone they talked about in the third person, even when I was in the room. But I wasn't used to what happened next. After the toast, I wheeled myself near the bar. I wasn't sure why. Maybe I just wanted to feel less anchored to that horrible seat. Callista was nearby, talking to the planner. Her voice wasn't hushed. It was clear, casual, almost bored. "Just make sure that wheelchair girl doesn't block the aisle tomorrow," she said, like she was talking about a flower pot or a crooked banner. The planner nodded. Understood. They moved on to napkin folds. That was it. No one paused. No one caught themselves. Certainly no one realized I was behind them, not even a full yard away. That wheelchair girl. I gripped the edge of the bar for a second before turning. I didn't go outside. I didn't cause a scene. I headed for the bathroom, not because I needed to use it, but because it was the one place no one would follow. I rolled in, locked the door, and stared at my reflection. There I was, hair pinned back, lip gloss smudged, shoulders drawn in. The effort to make myself invisible had finally paid off. I had become exactly what they expected, quiet, small, and in the way. That was the first time I realized being physically present could still feel like being erased. The drive home was silent. Sable kept both hands on the wheel, her lips pressed so tight they nearly vanished into her face. The overhead lights of the freeway flicked across the windshield, but she didn't speak. Neither did I. I didn't need to. Whatever was simmering inside me had already outgrown the need to explain itself. When we pulled into the driveway, I didn't wait for her to say anything. I unbuckled, opened the door on my own, and maneuvered down the ramp that had been installed 5 years ago and barely used since. I rolled into the living room, greeted by the muted hum of the fridge and the scent of vanilla from the candle she forgot to blow out. The house didn't ask me how the night went. It never did. I headed straight for my room, but something tugged at me. An old habit, maybe, or just a need to see myself reflected somewhere that wasn't a bathroom mirror. I passed the hallway where family photos once lined the walls, paused mid-motion, and backed up a few feet. The frame was gone. There had been a drawing I made when I was 11. It showed Callista and me holding hands in front of the old red maple in Celine's backyard. She had framed it herself, said it made her heart soft. That sketch had hung in this hallway for years, quietly asserting my place on the wall, until now. I scanned the walls, then the nearby shelves. No frame, no sketch. I checked the drawers beneath the hallway console, careful not to make noise. Found it. Face down, tucked under a stack of mail and old greeting cards. I lifted it out gently. The glass had a fine crack at the corner, and the backing was dusty. The drawing, though, still intact, still mine. But seeing it like that, hidden and turned away, made something sharp push against my ribs. A betrayal so casual it could have been overlooked if I wasn't paying attention. I carried it to my room, set it against the bookshelf, and stared at it under the lamplight. 11-year-old me had drawn us smiling, Callista in a long dress, me in jeans and a t-shirt, but both of us happy, visible. I remember how proud I was when Selene hung it up. She said, "This one's got spirit. You didn't just draw faces, you gave them feeling." Tonight, I wasn't sure that mattered anymore. I sat on the edge of my bed and pulled out my phone, not to text anyone, but to scroll, numb, robotic. That's when I saw it. Bryn had posted a story, a boomerang of her and Callista clinking glasses with the caption, "Finally, the perfect bridal squad." Everyone tagged, everyone smiling, everyone but me. I wasn't even in the background, cropped out entirely. It shouldn't have surprised me. Bryn had been pulling away for months, letting my messages sit unread, canceling plans with vague excuses. But this, posting that, knowing I'd see it, knowing it erased me on purpose, that hurt worse than anything she didn't say. I didn't react. No angry comment, no reply. Just sat there with that old ache pressing harder now. The kind that didn't cry anymore, just cracked. I turned off the phone and lay back on the bed, the drawing still within view. And in the dark, I started piecing things together. The missing invitation to last year's cousin brunch. The slideshow I built for Dad's retirement party, where my name didn't make it to the thank you speech. The time Sable referred to me as the strong one instead of her daughter. Like a label was easier than recognition. None of these were accidents. None of this was new. It had been building, a quiet removal, one missing word at a time. But something shifted tonight. This time, I didn't just feel erased, I felt replaced. And worse, like no one was going to notice the difference. I sat up and opened the Notes app on my phone. Not to vent, not to document for sympathy, just to start tracking dates, words, patterns. I'd always been the quiet one, the observer. But now I had clarity. I would not ask for space in their version of the story. I would build proof for mine. If they wouldn't tell the truth, I would collect enough to show it myself. The next afternoon, the clouds hung low over the city, like they were mimicking the mood I'd tucked into my chest and carried home last night. Mom insisted I ride along for a follow-up visit to the venue. Something about finalizing the flowers and checking the table arrangements. I didn't argue. not because I wanted to be there, but because there was something about going back that felt necessary. Like I hadn't finished reading a chapter that was already trying to close itself without me. As soon as we arrived, Sable slipped away into a corner with one of the caterers, her tone just bubbly enough to sound involved, but sharp enough to warn anyone not to look my way too long. I wheeled in slowly, letting the weight of yesterday hang behind me like a trailing coat. The room was half set, linens draped over the tables, empty vases waiting for centerpieces, silverware laid out with surgical precision. I kept near the wall, my movement quiet but deliberate. I didn't want to be seen, not really, but I needed to hear. That's when I saw Callista at the bar, leaning forward against the polished counter like she owned the air around her. The planner, same woman from yesterday, clipboard tucked under her arm, nodded as Callista gestured toward the aisle space near the stage. I paused just behind one of the tall planters, close enough to catch her voice without her catching mine. "Just make sure that girl doesn't block the aisle tomorrow," Callista said, her voice breezy, like she was talking about napkins or chair covers. "I don't want her ruining the photos." The planner scribbled something. "Of course." That girl. Not even Leora, not my sister, just a logistical inconvenience to be rearranged for aesthetic value. I didn't gasp, I didn't flinch, but my grip on the wheel rim tightened enough to leave an imprint in my palm. I bit the inside of my cheek until I tasted metal. They didn't know I was there. Or worse, they didn't care. I backed away from the planter and headed for the restroom again. Not because I needed it, but because there's only so many times you can be turned into scenery before you start forgetting you were a person first. Inside, the fluorescent lights cast a sterile glow over the mirror. I looked tired. Not in a didn't sleep well way, but in a way that said my soul had been carrying too much for too long. I pulled out my phone, not to call anyone. I wasn't ready to speak, but I opened the Notes app, tapped the plus sign. 3:27 p.m. That girl comment. Callista to planner. Purpose: hide me from ceremony photos. That was the first entry. If they were going to keep pretending this wasn't intentional, I'd build my own record. Words, times, dates. I'd document the pieces they assumed I'd be too hurt or too small to hold on to. I wasn't collecting revenge. I was collecting truth. Later that evening, after we returned home and Mom disappeared upstairs, a new message buzzed on my screen. Aunt Indira, 6:41 p.m. Sweetie, I know it's hard, but it's just a day. Don't be so dramatic. Just blend in. I stared at it. Just blend in. Like I was foundation makeup. Like my presence needed blurring. I didn't respond. Didn't throw the phone. Didn't cry. I turned off the screen, set the phone face down on my desk, and wheeled to the full-length mirror in my closet. I stared, not at my dress or my makeup or how I looked sitting down, but at my face. At the girl behind the eyes, they kept editing out of the frame. "You're not ruining anything," I whispered to my reflection. "You're the one they're trying to erase." And I'd stopped letting them do it quietly. If they didn't want me to speak, they should have treated me like I didn't remember everything. The air in my bedroom felt unusually thick that night. I sat by the edge of the bed, my laptop open, blue light casting quiet shadows across my blanket. I wasn't doing homework, not really. I was scrolling through an old folder I hadn't opened in weeks, the one labeled C+G design drafts. Inside were my sketches for the wedding invitations, color palettes, font mock-ups. Even the floral motif Callista had claimed was inspired by her fiancé's proposal at the Botanical Gardens, though that idea had come from a doodle I'd made at Celine's kitchen table. I clicked to enlarge one of the final drafts and pulled up a photo Mom had texted me earlier of the printed invites laid out across Callista's dining table. Identical, right down to the vellum overlay and the embossed initials in rose gold. But no one had asked me if it was okay. And no one had credited me. At first, when Callista asked me to help, I'd been over the moon. She made it sound like I was part of something important, finally more than a guest. "You've got such an eye," she'd said. hugging me loosely over my shoulder. "It'll feel more special if it comes from you." But now that it had, I'd become invisible again. My phone buzzed on the nightstand, breaking my stare. I let it buzz twice before picking it up. The screen showed Selene's name. "Hey, sweetheart," she said before I could speak. "I was just thinking, you didn't get a chance to try the dress I ordered. Do you have time tomorrow? We can do a quick fitting after lunch." It wasn't really a question, just a polite instruction wrapped in affection. The next day, I was back in her living room, soft classical music playing in the background, and the smell of citrus tea drifting from the kitchen. The dress hung on the door, still wrapped in plastic. "I had a little chat with Callista," Selene said brightly, helping me transfer to the chair in her bedroom. "She said a stand-up gown would give you more shape in the photos, so I found this one. Classic silhouette, elegant neckline. What do you think?" I forced a smile and nodded. It was beautiful, stiff, structured, long. The kind of dress you had to pose in, not live in. Selene peeled the plastic back and helped me into it. Her hands were gentle, her voice soft, but every pinched seam and high waistline made it harder to breathe. When I wheeled myself to the mirror, the image staring back looked composed, polished, and completely immobile. "They don't want me to belong," I whispered to my reflection when Selene left to fetch tea. "They want me to fit." Later that week, in the group chat Callista had created for wedding updates, she sent a thank you note. "Huge thanks to my incredible designer friend, Olivia, for the invite layout. Absolute perfection." I blinked. I scrolled back. Reread it. Designer friend. Olivia. A few family members responded with clapping emojis and heart eyes. One cousin replied, "Wow, you hired someone. They look so professional." Callista responded with a laughing emoji and a "she gets me." I didn't comment. I didn't need to. That night, I opened my journal. Not the one I used for drawings, but the other one. The one no one knew about. I flipped to a blank page and wrote at the top, the things they took without asking. First entry, my design. Second, my place. And beneath that, in smaller letters, I underlined twice, my voice. I closed the journal slowly, my hands steady now. Whatever this was, this arrangement, where I stayed grateful for the crumbs of inclusion, it wasn't working anymore. They wanted me quiet, compliant, and invisible. I could manage 2 out of 3, but not all. It was warm out at the vineyard. Too warm for the way I felt inside. The kind of sun that demanded you smile, sip from a stemmed glass, and pretend family felt like comfort. Sable parked the car without a word. She didn't reach for the trunk, didn't ask if I needed help unloading my chair. I'd stopped expecting that kind of thing. The path to the reception area was a paved stone trail, winding past rows of grapes and lavender bushes. Everything smelled like money and magazine ads. I rolled behind her, just far enough not to feel part of her silhouette. The brunch was supposed to be just family, an intimate gathering before the main event. But it looked more like a magazine shoot. Linen napkins, personalized menus, a slideshow running on loop on a flat screen near the wine station. I found my seat, far end of the table again. The chair next to mine was left empty, like someone forgot to finish setting the place. Or maybe they meant it as a buffer zone. I was used to those. Sable took her seat halfway down the table, beside an uncle I barely knew and didn't like. She glanced my way, but didn't call me over, didn't ask why I was apart. She didn't have to. The message was clear. This is how things are done. A few minutes later, Callista raised her glass and tapped a fork against it. "Quick toast before we dig in," she chirped. "I just want to say thank you to everyone who made this week so special. And to my creative genius of a friend, Olivia. I don't know what I would have done without your eye for detail. The slideshow is stunning." Polite applause. Someone near me murmured, "It's beautiful." I watched the screen. Photo after photo, every frame, every sequence, was taken from the storyboard I built 3 weeks ago. The music, the timing, the transitions, even the closing quote that I had thought of while sketching in Selene's kitchen. I didn't say anything, not to the group, not to my mother, not even to Callista, but my hands, resting on the wheels of my chair, tightened until my knuckles paled. I'd told Callista to use whatever she wanted. I just never imagined she'd thank someone else for it. Later, while people filled their plates and sipped their mimosas, I slipped my phone out and checked the bridal party group chat again. Still muted. Still a room I was in, but not really welcome. I scrolled up and found my message from a few days ago, a suggestion for a different slideshow transition that would match better with the closing song. It had one reply, a sticker Bryn sent of an exaggerated eye roll. That was it. No one had disagreed. No one had defended. I hadn't even realized how quiet the room had gone around me until I noticed a few relatives nodding in my direction without fully turning. The kind of acknowledgement you give someone you're not ready to confront. Even Bryn didn't say anything. She sat with Callista's college friends, laughing at something private, her back to me. We'd shared a dorm room once for a week-long art camp. Now, apparently, we didn't even share the same table. I took a bite of the quiche they'd plated in front of me. It was cold. After brunch ended, people lingered in the garden, glasses still half full. I watched them from a distance. Everyone was where they were supposed to be, grouped by comfort, by connection. I didn't belong to any circle anymore, not even the one I'd been born into. Sable passed by once, asked, "You good?" Without stopping for an answer. I nodded. That night, back in my room, I opened the Notes app again. 6/12. Wedding slideshow design used without credit. Name replaced by Olivia. 6/12. Seated separately again. Not acknowledged during toast. 6/12. Bryn's eye roll sticker. No support, no correction. I titled it, Things They Took Without Asking, Part 2. I added 3 more lines. My slideshow, my ideas, my presence. They borrowed my ideas and buried my name, but I kept receipts. The light filtering through the stained glass windows of the bridal suite was too perfect, like it had been curated by someone obsessed with aesthetics over authenticity. Callista had chosen this venue for the lighting, she'd said once. It softens everything, as if reality were something that needed diffusing. I had arrived early, per my mom's text. Come by at 9. They'll need help setting up, and it'll be nice to have you involved. Involved. I waited near the back corridor, parked beside a decorative ficus tree they'd clearly rented for the ambiance. The bridal suite door was propped open slightly, and I could hear the laughter inside. High, polished, full of the kind of excitement people wrap in Tule and champagne. But I wasn't in there. "Hey, just hang out here a minute," a planner chirped as she passed me, barely glancing down. "They're finishing a few group shots." A minute turned into 15, then 20. From where I sat, I could catch fragments of conversation, clinking glasses, someone adjusting curls with a curling wand that hissed when it touched damp hairspray. I waited like a ghost on standby. Eventually, I pulled out my phone. Habit, defense. Bryn's story had gone up 3 minutes ago. The caption read, "The Dream Bridal Squad," with a sparkle emoji. The photo showed 5 women in blush gowns, Bryn, Callista, and 3 others I recognized from the planning dinner, all linked by arms, smiling, glowing. I wasn't in it, not even in the reflection of a mirror. She'd tagged everyone but me. I felt nothing at first, just that numbing buzz in the chest that usually came before the pain, like a warning siren you can't shut off. My thumb hovered over the screen, but I didn't react. I just locked the phone and placed it on my lap. Sable found me in the lobby about 30 minutes later. She was holding a clipboard and a to-go cup. "You made it," she said with practiced cheer. "They're almost done in there. Just stay here for now, okay? Then we'll bring you in." I looked at her. "Why?" She blinked. "What do you mean?" "Why am I here? If I'm not in the photos, not in the room, why am I here?" Her smile faded. "Leora, it's not personal. It's just easier for the photographers. They're on a schedule." I said nothing. I didn't need to. She turned, muttering something about linens, and walked away before I could ask another question. I wheeled myself toward the back exit and slipped outside, breathing in air that didn't smell like someone else's big day. The sun was warm, the breeze soft. I sat by a bench near the garden and let my shoulders drop. That evening, after Sable dropped me off and headed back to the reception without offering to help me in, I got to work. I gathered everything: my sketch drafts, screenshots of the group chat, photos of the invitation and slideshow. I printed them one by one. I slid them into a plain white box, along with a copy of the framed drawing they'd removed from the hallway last month. I didn't say anything then, either. At the top of the stack, I placed a handwritten note. From the one you tried to edit out. I didn't cry. I didn't shake. I moved slowly, deliberately, as I folded the flaps and sealed the tape. The act felt sacred, like closure, but sharper. I addressed the box to the venue and called the courier service just before 9 p.m. "Next day, by noon," I said. "It's important." After I hung up, I wheeled over to my window and stared at the string of porch lights across the street. I imagined the reception in full swing, Callista twirling, champagne poured, everyone pretending nothing was wrong. And they'd be right, for a little while. They wouldn't know what was coming, wouldn't expect a voice from someone they thought had already been silenced. But I didn't need to be there. I didn't need their toast, their playlist, or their photo albums. For the first time, I felt strangely calm. Let the celebration begin. I've already made my entrance. I watched from my bedroom window as the courier's van pulled away from the curb, the white box safely tucked in the back, somewhere between flower arrangements and monogrammed keepsakes. I didn't breathe until it disappeared from view. Inside that box were things no one had asked for, and that was the point. A stack of printed slides pulled directly from the designs I'd made, the ones Callista had claimed were inspired by a friend. The discarded drawing from our hallway, folded but not forgotten. And on top, a single note in my handwriting. From the one you tried to edit out. Beneath it, a QR code printed on cardstock. Scanning it would open a private video. My voice, my face, no dramatic music, no animation, just me, seated at my desk, speaking plainly, calmly. I didn't expect it to cause an explosion. This wasn't a grenade, it was a mirror, and I was done waiting for someone else to hold it up. After the van was gone, I shut the blinds halfway, returned to my desk, and turned off my notifications. The live stream of the wedding was open in a background tab, muted. I didn't need to hear Callista's vows to know what they'd sound like. Perfect, curated, approved by a dozen Pinterest boards and 2 wedding planners. I heard a knock on my bedroom door, then a pause. "Just checking in," my dad said, voice low. "You okay?" I swiveled my chair slightly. "I'm okay." He didn't push. He never did. "You don't owe anyone today," he added before walking off. The ceremony started a few minutes later. Through the grainy live stream, I saw rows of people standing, then sitting, then rising again. I saw Callista float down the aisle in a gown made for applause. I saw Bryn, 2 steps behind her, grinning like she'd already rehearsed every photo. And I saw nothing of myself, not even a seat with my name. Midway through the cocktail hour, the box arrived. The planner had carried it in like it was just another registry gift. She placed it neatly on the white draped gift table, nestled between a wrapped blender and a basket of wine. Callista noticed it during the lull between family portraits and the reception. She reached for it while Bryn handed her a mimosa. I imagined the way her fingers froze when she read the name on the card. No return address. Just her name and mine. She opened it. First, the prints. Slides of the invitation suite, the storyboard, the photos she'd used in the slideshow, each labeled with the original file date. Below them, a copy of the drawing Celine once hung in the hallway. 2 little girls holding hands beneath a tree, their faces blank. And then the note, 4 words, ink slightly smudged. From the one you tried to edit out. She paused. Bryn looked over her shoulder, lips parted. Callista flipped the card to find the QR code. She scanned it. The planner, standing nearby, peered at the screen. Another cousin, curious, stepped closer. The video began. Me, sitting at my desk, plain white wall behind me. "Hi," I said. "You don't have to watch this, but if you do, just know I'm not here to ruin anything. I'm just here to be remembered." The video wasn't long, just under 4 minutes. I talked about being left off the slideshow, the seating chart, the photos. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't accuse. I listed. I ended with, "You don't have to say my name, but you won't erase it either." By the time the screen went dark, half the people near the gift table were silent. One aunt adjusted her necklace. Another uncle cleared his throat. Bryn stepped back like she'd touched something hot. Sable stood motionless, her face unreadable. No one looked at Callista, not directly. She didn't cry. She didn't shout. She just walked away mid-toast. The DJ didn't know what to do. He played a light instrumental cover of something nobody recognized. And just like that, the party cracked. Not broken, but not whole either. They finally heard my voice, because I stopped trying to speak softly. I stayed home. Not because I was afraid to go, but because I had already gone far enough. The reception had started just after sunset. Golden light slipping through tree branches, and string lights like it too, had been paid to show up glowing. I watched from the comfort of my bed, the live stream open on my laptop, silent. The images flowed like a slideshow, Callista on Grant's arm, people smiling, a perfectly decorated cake I never tasted. And I noticed it almost immediately. Dad wasn't there. No seat at the head table, no quick wave in the crowd shots, not a single frame. My phone vibrated against the blanket. "Astria, Dad, I watched your video. That took strength. That was it. Not a question. Not a pity-laced sentiment. Just recognition." I smiled, small and private. The kind that doesn't need an audience. Back on the screen, Callista stood with a microphone in hand. Her posture said poise, but her eyes flicked too quickly. Her fingers fidgeted around the base of the glass. "I just want to thank you all for being part of this beautiful journey," she began. The crowd responded with applause, soft and unsure. "Some of you may have seen something earlier," she continued, "and I just want to say, today is about joy." She didn't get further. Someone near the back whispered, too loudly to be accidental, "Where's your father?" Another voice added, "I thought he was giving a speech." Callista's face hardened. She glanced toward Sable, who remained seated, her expression carefully blank. "I think we'll just move on," Callista said, setting the mic down with a little more force than necessary. The music started up again, too quickly, and the volume too loud. But the shift had begun. Small conversations sparked at every table. I could see heads lean together, phones tilted away. People watched the video, my video again, some for the first time, some just needing to confirm what they'd heard was real. Bryn stood near the bar, not laughing for once. Her posture was rigid, arms crossed. Someone spoke to her, and she shook her head, tapping her screen before slipping her phone into her clutch. She'd deleted the bridal party post. I knew that without checking. Sable's eyes scanned the room like she was looking for an off switch. She didn't find one. The first dance never happened. Callista and Grant returned to their seats, and the DJ, visibly confused, pivoted into a slow instrumental that filled the silence without really covering it. People shifted in their chairs, unsure where to look. Phones buzzed with the things no one wanted to say aloud. Callista smiled, then didn't. Her face twitched once. Then she reached for her champagne and sipped without toasting. I turned away from the screen. Instead, I rolled over to my desk and opened my sketch pad. I didn't draw her. I didn't draw the venue or the dress or the people pretending to be happy. I drew a window, just a simple, open window, sunlight pouring through it onto a bare floor. Then I added a chair. Mine. It wasn't perfect. The lines were a little off, but it was mine. I pressed my pencil to the paper and whispered to myself, "You finally fit into something, and it wasn't a dress." I didn't need music. I didn't need applause. I needed this. This quiet. This stillness. This power that doesn't ask permission. She may have worn the dress, but I finally fit into my own skin. 2 days after the wedding, the house was still. Not quiet in the peaceful way, but quiet in the way that made you aware of every creak in the wood floor, every sigh from the old heating system. Morning light poured into my room, soft and golden, but it didn't warm the way it usually did. My phone hadn't made a sound since the video. No calls, no texts, no demands for an apology. Just a single notification at the top of the screen. "Celine liked your video." I stared at it for a long time before tapping the screen to clear it. It wasn't dramatic, it wasn't public, but it was enough. One small act that said, "I saw you." I allowed myself a faint smile, one that didn't quite reach the surface. It didn't need to. That afternoon, while I was rearranging some books on my shelf, Sable's voice floated in from the kitchen. "Do you want to come eat?" No nickname, no added cheer, no layered tone laced with performance. Just a question, just words. I didn't answer right away. I waited a beat, then another, to see if she'd follow up. She didn't. I wheeled into the hallway slowly, stopped at the edge of the doorway. She was setting plates at the table, hers, not mine. But there were extra forks, extra napkins. "I'm not hungry," I said, voice even. She looked over her shoulder, paused, then nodded once. "Okay." That was all. But something shifted. Not in a thunderous, heart-stopping way. It was more like the first time you notice winter turning to spring. Not warm yet, but not biting cold anymore either. I returned to my room, sat by the window, and picked up my phone again. Still silent. I scrolled through my texts, not sure what I was looking for. That's when I saw it. Bryn. I didn't know it was that bad. "I'm sorry if I hurt you." No punctuation, no emoji, just 12 words. I read it once, then twice, then a third time, then I deleted it. Not out of spite, not from anger, I just didn't need it. The family group chat had gone eerily quiet too. For 48 hours, not a single message, no baby photos, no forwarded memes, nothing about the leftover cake or who still had a charger for the venue's speaker system. Then a new message popped up. Cousin Mia. "Are we still doing dinner next week?" No one replied. I stared at it. Not out of concern, not out of expectation, but with the kind of stillness that comes from no longer feeling obligated to make things smooth again. I closed the app. The pressure wasn't mine to carry anymore. That evening, I opened my sketchbook. Not the notes app, not my journal. This time, I wanted to draw. I didn't recreate the wedding as it happened. I drew it how it could have been, not for them, just for me. A garden venue, candles, a dress that flowed but didn't pretend. And me, at the center of it. No one cropped out, no one turned away. I added details slowly. My chair, yes, but this time stylized. Built like a throne, not a device. A seat that meant presence. The last thing I added was my face, fully drawn, eyes open, no smudged outline. No need to hide. I closed the sketchbook and let it sit there on the desk. I didn't post it, didn't text it to anyone, didn't need to. They started a story without me. I wrote my own ending anyway. Rain drifted lazily down the windowpane, leaving trails that caught the morning light and scattered it into fragments across the wall. I sat beside the window, sketchbook open on my lap, pencil unmoving between my fingers. I hadn't drawn anything since the wedding. Not because I couldn't, but because everything I had to say had already been spoken. In print. In silence. In that video. The sound of tires on wet pavement pulled my gaze up. Celine's sedan pulled into the driveway, slow and steady like always. No text, no call, just her presence, announced in the way people used to before phones started replacing intentions. By the time I wheeled to the front door, She was already halfway up the porch, her raincoat dotted with mist and a paper bag cradled in her arms. "I brought something," she said. Her voice carried the same softness it always had, but there was a catch in it this time, like she wasn't sure if she was still allowed to be kind. I opened the door wide enough to let her in, and she stepped past without waiting for the usual small talk. In the bag, folded neatly, was the first dress, the one I'd picked before Callista decided on a more flattering silhouette that turned me into a prop. "I should have trusted your eye," Celine said gently, placing the bag on the side table. "Not Callista's word." I didn't know what to say, so I didn't say anything. Instead, I gestured toward the kitchen. She followed me into the space that still smelled faintly like cinnamon toast from earlier. We sat at the table, two mismatched mugs between us, steam curling quietly from our tea. She looked around the kitchen like she hadn't seen it a dozen times before. "I knew," she said finally. "Not everything, not every word, but enough." Her eyes met mine, old and tired, but honest. I should have said something sooner, should have stepped in. I kept telling myself that family matters should be handled gently, that silence was neutral. I see now, it's not. It wasn't a grand apology. It didn't come with flowers or speeches or dramatic regret. But it landed, because it was real. "I'm not angry," I said. "Maybe you should be." "Maybe. But I'm not." Celine nodded slowly, tears forming but not falling. She didn't need to cry. She just needed to sit there, and she did. We talked for a little while longer, about things that didn't matter. The weather, her garden, a neighbor's dog that wouldn't stop barking at sprinklers. The kind of talk that fills in the cracks of what's already broken without pretending to fix it. When she stood to leave, I moved to the hallway before her, leaving my chair behind and grabbing the crutches. My legs ached, but I wanted to stand, wanted her to see that I still could. We walked slowly toward the front door, the rain tapping steady on the roof above. She paused at the threshold, eyes flicking over me, then over the framed sketch on the wall. The one I'd hung up again, this time with both faces left blank on purpose. She didn't say anything, just stared. I opened the door for her. She stepped out, then turned as I offered a small smile. "I never needed a spotlight," I said, "just a seat that was mine." She reached for my hand and squeezed gently before stepping out into the rain. I closed the door behind her and let the silence return. Later that night, I returned to my desk and pulled out the sketch pad I hadn't touched in days. I flipped past empty pages, past notes and scribbled memories, and stopped on a fresh sheet. I drew 3 figures: myself, Celine, and Dad. We weren't dressed for any occasion. We weren't posed for a photo. We were just there, together. Not perfectly shaded, not fully symmetrical, but present. I signed my name in the bottom right corner, bold, without hesitation. I didn't rewrite the story to hurt them. I rewrote it so I wouldn't forget me. 3 weeks had passed since the wedding. Seattle had slipped fully into early summer. Longer days, softer evenings, an air that smelled like grass and warm pavement. I sat at my desk, the one I'd cleared for the first time in months. A clean surface, a quiet screen. On it was my college application, 1 click away from submission. My portfolio was complete, dozens of pieces pulled from years of sketchbooks, late nights, and recent truths. The last upload? A digital collage I titled Uninvited, Unfolding. I didn't add a description, just my name, signed in the bottom corner. Bold, legible. I hovered over the button, then pressed Submit. A breeze moved through the open window beside me, just enough to ruffle the edge of my sketch pad. I didn't flinch. I sat still for a while, not checking my phone, not refreshing anything, just sitting in the space I'd made for myself. Later that afternoon, Dad showed up with iced coffees and 2 bagels in a paper bag. He didn't knock, just nudged the door open like he always did. "Thought we could walk," he said. We didn't speak much during the first half-mile. The path in our favorite park wrapped around a lake, shaded by tall firs, and the occasional chorus of ducks arguing in the reeds. The silence between us wasn't awkward. It was earned. Halfway through the loop, he finally said, "If speaking up made you lose them, it means they were never listening." I didn't answer right away, but I knew what he meant. He didn't mean Callista specifically, or Sable, or even Bryn. He meant all of them. We sat on the bench near the north end of the park, the one that overlooked the hill and the city skyline beyond. He opened his coffee, took a sip, and then said, "You know, you could have screamed, started a fire. You didn't." "I didn't want revenge," I said. "I just didn't want to disappear." He nodded once, slowly. When I got home, there was an envelope tucked between the day's mail. No return address, but the handwriting was unmistakable, Celine's, curling and deliberate. Inside was a small card. "You taught me how to see again. Love, Celine." Taped to the bottom was a miniature sketch of me in my old chair, head tilted back, laughing, caught mid-motion. Not posing, not apologizing, just living. I placed the card on my desk and let it sit there. A reminder that not all silence is absence. The family group chat never really came back to life. Every now and then, a cousin would drop a picture of a dog or a birthday cake, but there were no more long threads, no gifts, no pings from Callista. Someone told me she was taking time off social media. That's what they say when a person gets caught in a story they didn't write. No one mentioned the wedding anymore. It disappeared like a rehearsal set, taken down, boxed away, only remembered by the people who bothered to pay attention. I kept moving, I kept drawing, and I kept choosing myself. The sketchbook on my desk was nearly full. The final page, still blank, waited for something worthy. I opened my journal instead and flipped to the back. Wrote a line I'd been turning over for days. When you spend years being quiet, your first word feels like thunder. It wasn't bitter. It wasn't angry. It was free. I closed the journal, grabbed my bag, and headed for the door. Not to leave something behind, but to move toward whatever came next. No more waiting for a seat. No more scripts I didn't write. I was never the extra. I was the author. They just didn't want to read the truth. Sometimes, standing up for yourself doesn't look like shouting across a room. It looks like sitting still while the world spins around you, refusing to disappear. I used to believe that being quiet made me strong, but what I've learned is that silence, when expected of you, can be a form of erasure. And reclaiming your voice, especially when no one wants to hear it, is one of the bravest things you'll ever do. You don't need to be loud to be seen. You don't need to be cruel to be heard. But you do need to know your worth before others ever will. I didn't speak up to burn bridges. I spoke to stop pretending I was never standing on them in the first place. So I ask you, have you ever felt like the extra in your own life? Have you ever watched people write you out of moments you helped build? If this story touched something inside you, I'd love to know. Drop a 1 in the comments if you've ever had to fight to be recognized. Or tell me where you're watching from. Let's build a space where every voice matters, starting right here. And if this story resonated with you, please subscribe to the channel so you won't miss the next journey we take together. Your story matters. Let's keep telling them, one truth at a time.